Round 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In the red corner, representing Manhattan, with an undefeated record of over $40 billion worth of real estate sales, Barbara Corcoran. In the blue corner, the challenger, representing the entire state of Tennessee, with a professional record of about $4 million worth of real estate sales, Dave Ramsey.
Blue, you're my boy!
Are you both ready? Begin. What's happening, YouTube? My name is Mike, and I hope you enjoyed the intro you just watched.
Yeah, baby!
In today's video, we're going to be calculating how much house you can afford using advice that we get from both Barbara Corcoran and Dave Ramsey. Both of these people are highly successful entrepreneurs and offer slightly different pieces of advice when it comes to buying a home. And so before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone that you are currently watching part 3 of the home buying series. We're still talking about this category and are going to wrap up with question number 2 by diving into Microsoft Excel and showing you an example of how you can calculate how much house you can afford. And did I mention the theme for this video is catered towards millennials?
Wow!
So here's a quick blast from the past. Alright, so today's matchup is gonna be between Barbara Corcoran and Dave Ramsey. Both are highly successful entrepreneurs that have backgrounds in different industries. Barbara, you probably recognize from the popular TV show called Shark Tank. Her background is in real estate, where she is known to have turned a $1,000 loan into a $5 billion real estate company. Between her and Dave, I think she probably gives the simplest advice when it comes to figuring out how much you should spend on your first home. Her advice is to take your salary and then multiply it by 4, and that's usually what you can qualify for. Meaning, if you make $50,000 a year, then you should be looking at houses that are in the $200,000 or less price range. And in comparison, let's take a look at what Dave Ramsey has to say about buying your first home, and we can learn a little more about his background as well. So to start off, if you've never heard of Dave Ramsey before, he's an American radio station host that focuses a majority of his content on personal finance and offering advice to everyday people who call into his show.
Hi, Charles. Welcome to the Ramsey Show.
Hi, Dave. Thanks so much for taking my call.
His background in real estate started at a young age where he grew a $4 million real estate portfolio. Unfortunately, he eventually had to file for bankruptcy a few years later as one of his lenders demanded that he repay his $1.2 million debt within 90 days. Ever since that moment, he's been a huge advocate for never again using debt to pay for things ever again.
Don't do it.
He recommends that people use cash for their purchases and to never use a credit card. When it comes to buying your first home, Dave recommends that you spend no more than 25% of your monthly take-home pay on your mortgage payment. And so now that we have advice from both a real estate expert and a personal finance expert, let's jump into Microsoft Excel and we can compare both of their recommendations and give you a better idea about how much money you can afford to spend on a house. So let's say between you and your spouse, you bring in an annual household income of about $80,000. Well, in this example, just to keep things simple, let's say that after you pay your taxes to include Social Security and Medicare, that your take-home pay for your household comes out to be $60,000 a year. Well, since Barbara's advice is probably the simplest, we're going to use that as a baseline for this example. So she recommends taking this $60,000 number and multiplying it by 4 to get a total of $240,000, which represents how much house you can afford. And this number is including a 20% down payment on the home, meaning you can buy a house that's valued at $240,000. You're going to make a down payment payment of $48,000, and then you'll only have to borrow $192,000 from your bank or mortgage lender. And let's say you can't afford a 20% down payment, and a 4% down payment is more realistic for you, well then, that would mean you can afford a home that's valued at $200,000. You would have to make a down payment of $8,000, and then you would have to borrow the remaining $192,000 from your bank or mortgage lender. Well, to stick with Barbara's original recommendation, we're gonna make a 20% down payment, meaning on our $60,000 annual take-home household salary, we can afford a $240,000 house. Our down payment would be $48,000, and we would have to borrow $192,000 from a bank or mortgage lender. Our monthly mortgage payment would be about $1,326 per month, and we would pay off our mortgage in 15 years. And remember, that's Barbara's recommendation. Let's now take a look at Dave's recommendation and see how this compares. So Dave Ramsey recommends that you spend no more than 25% of your monthly household take-home pay on your mortgage payment. So using the original example, we'll take your annual take-home pay of $60,000 and then convert it to your monthly pay, which would be $5,000. And then 25% of that would be $1,250. This is the maximum amount your monthly mortgage payment should be based on your annual take-home salary. And so similar to earlier, using Dave's recommendation, assuming you have a $60,000 annual take-home household salary, you can afford a house that's worth about $226,000. Your down payment would be around $45,000. You would have to borrow about $181,000 from a bank or mortgage lender. Your monthly mortgage payment would be $1,250 per month, and you would pay off your mortgage in 15 years. And if we compare both recommendations within this example, it looks like Barbara is recommending that you can afford a house that is 4 times your salary, while Dave is recommending that you can afford a house that is roughly 3.8 times your salary. So both pieces of advice are fairly close, with Dave being slightly more conservative in his recommendation. Now, the only thing we forgot to include in these calculations are all the miscellaneous expenses that come with buying a home. So if you saw part 2 of this video series, then you already know there's a laundry list of expenses that are associated with buying a home. So let's include some of these expenses in our example and see how it affects how much house we can afford. So if we run through our example again, there's a few things we forgot to include with our monthly mortgage payment. We need to pay property taxes, homeowners insurance, private mortgage insurance, and possibly homeowners association fees. Now, as a baseline, we're not going to include PMI expenses or HOA fees in this example. If you watched the previous video, then you know PMI is an extra expense you will have to pay if you put less than 20% on a down payment. And since in this example, we're making a 20% down payment, then we don't have to worry about that. HOA fees are not going to apply to everyone, as you only have to pay that if you plan on living in an HOA community. So we're not going to include that in this example. So if we run through this example again, the only extra expenses we'll include here are gonna be your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. And I'll use New York State as an example. Here's the annual rate for property taxes, and here's the annual premium we'll have to pay for homeowner's insurance in this state. So when we include these numbers in our calculation, in order for Barbara to keep the same monthly mortgage payment from the original problem, the amount of home she can afford drops to about $179,000. And likewise with Dave, if we account for property taxes and homeowners insurance, then the amount of home he can afford will drop to about $168,000. So regardless if you followed Barbara or Dave's advice, we can see that both calculations came out to a fairly similar answer. And with that being said, I think it's only fair to call this match a draw. If you're a millennial watching this right now and have a similar financial situation that's listed on the screen,
Go gadget money.
then realistically, you should be able to afford a home that's between about $168,000 to $179,000. And that's gonna wrap up this category. Stay tuned for the next video where I'll talk about all the different types of mortgages that are available to you as a first-time home buyer. See you next time.
And as always, stay frugal, fam.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for watching this video. Be sure to hit the subscribe button that's right above me. And then check out my other videos, which are listed on this side of your screen. We'll see you next time, Frugal Fam.